All right, and we're back. Hey Don,
Excellent.
how's it going, buddy?
Not too bad. How are you doing
I'm
today?
doing good. So here we are for round two on this episode where we're talking about what a story and what it means to us. I know that we mentioned that we were going to try to be running this show once a week every Monday, but we bumped this one up because of personal businesses that we have to attend to. So either way, we're always going to try to get one a week, a discussion. We may have to move it around, but in this case, we were able to bump it up earlier. So,
Excellent.
um, yeah. So getting into what is story and what it means to us, and I'm gonna throw you in there like last time and let you go first.
Yeah,
So,
so let's take it from what it means to us as an audience perspective. Instead
okay,
of us coming from behind the camera out, let's talk about being from in front of the screen watching it. Because I think that's an equally as important concept as how to develop story.
so
So
basically, how the audience receives it, you want to discuss, and not so much as the craftsman, the thought process, and they're making the film, but how the
right,
audience when you go to see a movie. So okay, I'm following you.
exactly.
So
So as a person in an audience, um, I want to be taken. Me personally, I want to be taken on a ride. So whether it be um, an emotional ride, a spiritual ride, if you would call it,
yeah,
or just an awesome in that 80s action film. Like
yeah, yeah,
I want to be taken on a ride. I want to go somewhere. I want to have fun. And then there's other times as an audience I want to get involved with the dramatic parts of a story, or
right,
um, I want to feel the yearning for the girl in a rom com.
right,
So there's a lot of things that as an audience members that I want to see, and it's just I'm sure anybody can attest to this. While scrolling through your Netflix feed or your Amazon Prime feed or whatever feed you have that you're watching movies,
right,
you'll sift through movies, and you might pass over great films just because you might be in that mood of, hey, you know what? I want a nonsensical comedy film, or I want, you might, you know, go past the comedy and say, you know what? I really want to see this dramatic film and kind of see,
right.
I want to feel that. So as the audience, our our experience of film is based a lot on our emotional position at the time of watching the movie.
Right.
I
Hmm.
feel
No,
so we could watch a movie and say, maybe we're in a mood where we were all happy and giddy and stuff like that. And
yeah,
now we're watching a sad film. We might be like, you know, oh man, this movie is terrible
right.
because it's not connecting with
The mood they're
with
in at
where
the
where
moment.
we are, yeah, emotionally.
Right, right. And
So I
that
feel like, not to cut you off, Jimmy.
it's okay.
Like,
Go ahead.
for instance, one of the most divisive films right now is, and within the last year, 2 years, has been The Last Jedi. And, part of it, I think a large portion of that movie as to why people don't like the film
Okay.
is because of their emotional expectations when they went into the movie.
That's
And,
I couldn't agree more. It
and,
does. Yeah. Hmm.
and admittedly, I'm one of those people. Like, I hated the movie the first time I watched it. And then,
Right.
there were parts of the movie I liked, a lot more the second time, I started watching it. Because although I hated the movie at first, I went back and watched it again,
Right.
and I was like, you know what, it's really not that bad.
And
It
I think it's really important what you're saying because on our last episode we touched upon on how story is a means of communicating, right? and
Right.
and now what we're discussing today is basically story is also a form of entertainment, and that we have to understand that the mindset of the audience at the time may alter the way that they receive that message. And it's not just a message, it's it's entertainment and taking people for a joyride, taking them under an
Yeah.
experience. And people may receive it differently because of that. And I like referring to music like I did in the last episode. Like you know, what genre is good, what genre is bad, and a lot of times we like diverse music, just depending on the mood we're in. If we're in a mellow mood, we want to listen to soft music, and that that just comes across right. And if we want to get pumped up, if we're about to hit the gym, there's a whole different type of music that calls to us, and just builds our energy. So remembering that it's also entertainment. And an example I like to use is I was just talking to you right before we started this stream live, talking to you about a roller coaster ride. When we go to an amusement park, we don't realize basically when we go on a roller coaster ride, that's a story, and it's because we're getting on something that rises and falls in energy and brings a certain type of excitement, and takes us on for a ride. And when we go watch a movie, that's what that does. There's action in it that rises and falls like a roller coaster, and takes us for twists and turns. And when you look at the structure of story, when we talked about, there's different types of structure. Like there's the 3-act structure, there's the four-act structure, and even 5-act structure. But the most commonly known is the 3-act structure. And you and I have discussed this a lot of time. Like the movie always opens up with an ordinary world, but it has to do with a character embarking on a journey that they go through all these different twists and turns. And then at the end, the character arc brings them back to the beginning, back to the world, but they come back as a different person. And I see that
Right.
even in the roller coaster experience. When you get on it, when you first get on the roller coaster, it's an ordinary world. You're waiting for this journey that you're about to take. You know something's going to happen, but you're going into the unknown. And that's what happens in the movie,
Absolutely.
right? So, and then as you're climbing, the energy is what I mean. It's getting more intense, and then all of a sudden there's that plot turn, that twist, and it just drops. And you can be going into a cave that you don't know it's dark, you don't know what's happening there. You're going twists and turns. And after all these experiences, when you come back, you're being brought to where you got on the ride. You're getting off. But because of the ride, you come back as a different person. So, yeah, the entertainment calls to us. There's something that you said great in the last episode, that people love story, and I think that's what we're talking about here is why. It has to do with entertainment. It has to do with the thrill of it, not only with a learning process of what we're able to gain from it, but there's a thrill factor, and I think that's what we're
Right.
discussing here. And that thrill factor, depending what your mindset in, may alter the way you accept a film, or whether if you believe it's good or not.
Right. Like for instance, I'll take a movie that is an equally bad movie as an equally great movie.
Okay.
The movie Samurai Cop. It's hysterically funny, you know. But if you go to that movie expecting first of all, by the title of the film, you should expect a zany movie. You should just expect the only thing you should expect is that there might be a cop and there may be a samurai in a movie.
Right.
That's it. And so there's probably swordplay. So I watched this film and I absolutely loved the movie. Was it a good movie? No.
Right.
By no means was this movie an excellent film at all. But what was it? It was hysterical. It was fun, and it was everything that I was looking for when I was in that emotional position.
Gotcha.
So, in other aspects of life, we talk about emotional intelligence with people. We talk about emotional intelligence within relationships, emotional intelligence within dealing with other people, and emotional intelligence with communication. That maybe to a board or a group of people. So we have this idea of emotional intelligence. So with movies, why don't we have another idea of emotional position? And I think that a lot of times people hate movies. It may be due to their emotional position of the movie.
Right.
For instance, imagine you were young, right?
Okay.
We were all young, so it's easy to imagine, okay? So have you ever, like when I was a kid, for instance, trying to think what movie. Okay. Take E.T. for example. Okay.
All right.
When I was a kid, I was terrified of aliens. Okay. I was terrified of E.T. I hated that movie. Hated it. because I was terrified of it.
So it came
I
across
become
differently
an
to you. So where for
it
most kids, it's supposed to be something that
right,
they adore and they cling to. It had the whole extreme opposite reaction to you.
right.
You perceived
And
it as
so
horror.
right,
Okay.
I perceived it as horror because my emotional position at the time was that of fear of this 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 extraterrestrial. That
Right.
may seem silly, but as a 7-year-old kid or a 5-year-old kid, however old I was when I first saw the movie, this was a big freaking deal.
Right.
So now that I've gotten older, my emotional position has obviously changed, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Now, this went from a movie that I tried every way I could as a kid to not see the movie and not experience the movie. Then why is it as an adult I'm seeking movies that touched on the same emotional connections as what this movie did for me
Right.
as an adult? Because the themes are now part of that emotional connection. I can watch ET and go, man, I remember when my brother and I did this. I can remember because again, ET was an embodiment of you know whatever it was in the movie. And
Right.
again, I don't want to talk too many things about like story arcs and story structures and that, but as far as the emotions of it,
Right.
as the audience member, I found myself wanting to seek that. So now let's talk about some other movies that were along the same line. You've
Okay.
got one of my favorite films of the last 15 years, which is Super 8. I love that movie. You know, other people that see the movie might be like, it's okay. It's a monster film. It's okay.
Right.
I love the movie. I've watched that movie so many times. Why? Me back to what E.T. did for me emotionally as I got older.
Right.
So again, the emotional position that we have when we see a movie dictates the
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 way it's
impact it
received.
has on us.
Right.
Exactly. So again, let's take a movie like Last Jedi. How did As a Star Wars fan, I definitely went into the movie, wanting to be like, oh my god, because as a Star Wars fan, you sit there and you go, you know, what's going to happen now? Where you start thinking of this, you want to put these puzzle pieces together in your own mind. And The Last Jedi did none of that. The
Right.
Last Jedi didn't do any of that. It went the opposite direction.
So and taking it back to like a filmmaker's perspective, this is why I think we should watch as a filmmaker. You should watch the film twice, and
Mm-hmm.
because we're guilty of that as well. Filmmaker going to watch a film, of not dropping our expectations as much as we should, because we're going in there with a very critique mind, and we're immediately looking at story structure. We're looking at lighting. We're looking at the shot sequence. The first time around, I think you need to drop all that. You need to like
Mm-hmm.
empty your mind and go in there and receive it like an audience, and allow yourself to be engaged emotionally and mentally, and just and feel the ride. So so there's that. And then the second time around, if you enjoyed that experience, we're about breaking it down. If you're trying to, because being a filmmaker, we're always a student of film, and when we watch a film, we're still being a student to that as well, and trying to learn and take away from it. But to really take from it what it has to offer, we have to put our guards down. So
We
yeah,
do.
yeah,
We really do have to put our guard down because I mean, there's several movies that I've seen that aren't um, these fantastic films. It's not,
right.
but I watch the movie and I go, wow, that was a great movie. And it's,
And
you know,
and now is like a greater time than ever, that the fact that we are exposed to so many different types of film from so many different cultures, internationally. It's so easy to sit down and, like you mentioned Netflix before. We're getting film, where once upon a time it was more of, you're seeing films that were produced there in your area, in your region, in your country. Now you're watching film from overseas. It can be in Chinese, it can be in Spanish, it can be in India, and that reflects, like how they tell their stories, their culture. And are we in a mindset to understand it and receive it? You know what I mean? So,
right.
it's
Well,
something to think about.
I'm glad you said that because there's a movie that came to mind. Now again, emotional. Let's talk about emotional position again, because
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and coin this as, a possible theory to start thinking about how audiences uh, perceive a film is their emotional position within that viewing.
Okay.
There's a movie that I saw, one of my favorite movies, and it's a movie that's on Netflix. That it's called Troll Hunter. It's a Norwegian film. It is. I don't know if you've seen it. It is absolutely, positively amazing.
No, I haven't seen the
I,
Troll
I
Hunter. I'll
watched it.
have to check it out.
I went in there and I just said, "Sweet, this movie." The name, and there was a giant troll on it. I was like, "You sold me at giant troll on the box." So you already sold me to where
You like
where I wanted to go.
you like
What was
trolls,
my
huh?
emotional position? My emotional position was I was totally down with seeing a monster film because I do like big monster films. I mean,
Right.
you know how much I love, the original Cloverfield.
You're
You know,
making another point to think about too is basically on how a film is marketed. Sometimes they do a good job of already like letting you know what's in the film, but sometimes they'll give you a twist and turn thinking that the film is
right?
something else. And I think it's important with this point that you're making to start from the very beginning on marketing to get them into that emotional position that you're talking about. Because if you're going into a film to expecting something else because of the way it was marketed, the way the trailer was cut and stuff like that,
Right.
you might not be in that right state of mind to accept that film. And now you're disappointed.
Absolutely.
You're disappointed because of how it was marketed and you were thinking it to be something else. So it's important to think about that very early as a filmmaker.
Absolutely.
So you rise, you bring a really good point that I think is really interesting.
You know, absolutely. And so watching the movie, so I was already like, sweet. My emotional position was I want to see a monster film. I just wanted to see a fun movie, and this movie delivered all across the board. It
Right.
was in Norwegian. I can't speak Norwegian. Don't even know what they were saying. Thank
Right.
God there were subtitles, so I was reading the subtitles.
Right.
But the movie was exciting. It was exciting, and there wasn't a troll on the screen the whole time. Until like maybe the end of the movie. So,
That's what
like,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just to throw it in, that's what I like about Apocalypto is the fact it was a
yes,
whole nother language. I didn't have to read the subtitles, and the cinematography was so great and the directing in it that
right,
I understood it. I understood what was going on without even having to speak the language, and that's great craftsmanship right there coming across, and really
yes,
putting you the way they just put you into that world, made you feel like you were in that world and you understood it. But getting
yes,
back to what you're saying,
and that's something truly special.
right,
Um, so again, my emotional position was I wanted to see a monster film, watch this movie, totally blown away with everything in this film.
right,
It just blown away. I thought it had good effects. But what it had was it had great chemistry. Like I felt like I was experiencing this movie with my friends. These friends didn't speak English. Again, I keep going back to that it was Norwegian.
right,
All they were speaking was Norwegian, but I felt like I was with them, and
right,
it was
right.
exciting. I had an absolute blast uh, within this film. So again, it's one of those things where you know
So it's
expectations, emotional position. I really do think it was my emotional position at the time.
so you feel
You
also
know,
that you can bridge gaps between cultures if you just do a fine job of delivering on expectations. You just have to know how to go about it.
yeah, like understand what it is,
Right.
and it's fun. I mean, again, another movie that I loved, another monster film, since we're talking monster films,
Okay.
is The Host, a South Korean film. The Host, excellent movie. Excellent movie. Had a whole family dynamic. It was so exciting. I loved that movie. And again, do I speak Korean? Nope. But I understood the movie and it was excellent. Like that's another movie that's so much fun. And again, my emotional position was I want to go see a monster film. I'm going to go watch a monster film. I'm watching a monster film and holy cow, this movie is really doing something special.
Right.
And that's exactly what the movie The Host did. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
again, when we get people into theaters, as filmmakers, as creatives, or even if they're not in theaters, because some of these films I watched, at home on my cell phone or on a TV. My thing is that, emotional position of what
The
what it
audience.
is you're watching will really dictate a whole lot within the experience of the audience. So that's kind of what I feel like as an audience member, um, watching a movie. And again, from what you're kind of saying, you kind of agree with that,
Right.
notion of emotional position.
Well, what I'm taking from this is, as far as what story means to you, is not only the story itself, but remembering to put yourself in the audience shoes. Remembering what
Right.
moved you in the beginning to want to tell stories, and the way you felt, and just realizing that, you know, there's different moods that come into play. And then,
Absolutely.
right, right. Well, cool. And the thing about stories is like it. Here we're talking about just the emotional um, impact it has on people, and then just understanding structure is another thing to think about when you're devising it. And it's like going down a rabbit hole. Anything in filmmaking, you can just break it down further and further and further and further. But yeah, I like what we were able to talk about this time. Basically, remembering, in being a filmmaker, remembering being the target audience, remembering that experience, that child in you when you receive these films, and how it's going to be received. And as an audience, remembering that, you know as far as expectations, have an open mind, and it might heighten our experience to the film.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Sometimes you may not like a movie the first time you saw the movie, and then as you get older, as you grow, as you experience new things, your emotional position changes,
Gotcha.
and you get back to, you might come back and watch a film and go, "Well, that film really speaks to me."
Right.
And I completely trashed the movie the first time.
And then you watch
I
it at a
mean,
different time and you feel
yeah,
differently
and
about it.
you're like, "Wow, I was so wrong."
Yeah, that's amazing
Yeah,
how a movie can do that. Like, one time you can watch it and you think it's great, and then later so on, yeah, it's not so great anymore, or you're tired of it. And the first time around, it could be the opposite. You just didn't take it well, but later on, you like, I didn't get
you
this,
know.
but I get it now.
So it almost kind of sounds like going to like Eisenstein's, yes, Sergei Eisenstein's, theory with montaging
Okay.
is when you put two things next to each other in time, the audience draws a conclusion out of it. For instance, when you
Right.
saw the actor, and then it showed a bowl of some food,
Right.
and the audience said, "Oh, he looks hungry." And now it was the same clip, the same image of the actor.
Right.
That never changed.
Right.
And
Perspective.
then you saw, the actor, and then a young woman,
Right.
and the audience was like, well, he's very lustful to this young woman.
Right.
And then you saw, the last one was
Well,
the
from
actor and a casket, and then you saw, and the audience was like, he is in mourning.
Yeah,
So
filmmaking is
again,
psychological. It's very
it,
psychological. So
right. and
right.
and we're just talking about four different images.
Right.
Three of them are different.
Right.
One of them stays the exact same the entire time,
Right.
and the audience drew different conclusions. So if we sit there and take ourselves as that audience, as that test audience, based on our emotional position and our experiences in life, we
Right.
can watch the same movie. That movie doesn't change. You watch it over and over again at different times in your life, and it's going to say different things to you.
Right. So
So
we're already at 25 minutes, and time flies. Look how quickly this episode went. So
I know this.
so
This is
yeah.
this is a very fun topic. This
Yeah.
was, it's very, very interesting.
Right.
Talking about story,
Yeah.
and kind of understanding a story from a different perspective.
So bringing this to a
Um,
closing. What's your last? How would you close this up? And what's your last message for people?
oh man,
One thing I want to throw in from what you said: if you've seen a movie that you didn't like it before, at a
Right.
certain point in your life, maybe give it a second chance.
Yeah. Try to go
Check it out
watch it
again.
again.
Maybe or rent it or whatever. You know, see if it gives you a different experience, and that'd be something interesting for me to do. I'm going to think about a movie that I didn't like in the past and try watching it again and see,
Right.
how that story influences me now.
Yeah.
And
You know,
what's your last words? What would you sum this up to be?
I'm gonna do those same things. If you saw a movie that you didn't like maybe the first time,
Right,
give yourself an hour, watch it again, see if things changed.
right,
Um, they can.
awesome.
So
And in closing, it looks like we might have a first guest coming up soon. We haven't
yes.
finalized the date yet. You want to give a quick, brief intro to who that might be, and then we'll close on that.
Um, Somebody who's worked in the industry as a cinematographer, and has written and directed some short films as well. Very interesting individual. Good friend. You really can't wait to have him on,
Excellent,
to kind of give it some insight in some of the things.
excellent. Looking forward to
So
that. All right, Don.
excellent.
Thank you again, and hope you have a great day, buddy.
All right, Jimmy. You too.
All right, bye
Bye.
bye.